That, what do you think? Is that silly?
No, I like the blue. I think that's nice.
The clinic, can you see the CED Clinic normally?
I can. Yeah, actually, that looks really sharp.
Okay. So that, or because when nothing but last minute. Or that.
I like the clinic logo better.
Okay. Okay.
Excellent. And our attendees are coming in. I see 9 that we have.
People are already in. Good.
Already, yes. And let's see here.
Let me start with my share my screen. Yeah. Oh, you have to enable share screening.
And let's see what we got here. Share screen. All panelists. Excellent.
Wait, how can they see her?
I think they mean they can see us. Let's see, we can see the chat that's happening on the side, but attendees should only be able to see Dr. Caplan and myself. They see us both. Great.
That's just the panelists.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I should joke. Is that silly?
Nah, it's always good to joke.
Wait, so they can see the screen share already?
That is correct, yes.
Oh, are we live?
We are.
Oh, hi, everybody. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, we opened the door and they came on in.
Alrighty then. Hi. Hi, everybody. Hi, Janice. Awesome. So we're expecting like 40 odd people.
Yeah, we had a good turnout for the registrants.
Awesome. We have 13 people so far, so maybe we can just kick it back for a minute.
Sure thing.
Wow.
And you know what I'd like to do while we're just getting our tests, Kimberly, I'm going to click the allow to talk button. If you're there, if you can just say hello. So let's see here. This is an older person. Okay, let's see here. And
Here.
unmute.
Oh, there she is.
Sorry.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Can you unmute her?
Let's see. I selected the unmute button, but I think
Maybe she has spinal control over it.
I think she might have to click the.
Okay. Try unmuting yourself.
There we go. I can hear the background. So
yeah.
Perfect. Kimberly, can you just say hello real quick? Oh, I heard her sigh.
Okay.
Excellent. I will. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So I will now put you back in our guests here. Thank you. So we just tested that feature. So for this webinar, folks will actually be able to ask your questions live with your voice to Dr. Caplan. So that's an exciting feature we're happy to roll out this time. So that'll be nice for later on. Yeah.
And good feedback from last time.
Exactly.
So right on. Okay, so 15 people are here. Maybe we should kick it off and yeah. So I'll just review the plan I have in mind. There's a lot to talk about here. So I'll actually, even though there are a lot of things, I'll try to keep them relatively short. And then if people have interest, we can cover them in the sort of open part at the end. So first of all, welcoming everybody. Thanks for coming. This is our second Fireside Chat, and we're still figuring it out. But we got some great feedback from last time, and we're making small changes every time. So please feel free to share thoughts any way you want, email or text in the chat. I had the idea that tonight we'd talk about sleep hygiene for starters. This is basically the idea that cannabis isn't the holy grail, that it's a tool that everybody has, but it's not independent. It depends on all the other things people do for sleep. And just because you're trying cannabis doesn't mean you're going to have great sleep. It's one piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. And then covering state of the industry. Even though the science is far more advanced than people think, no matter how far it is, the industry is still very much driven by profit and investor interests, and that's going to persuade what options people have for treating sleep. Although I think I'm starting to see things are kicking into gear. We're starting to see more, individualization or sort of focused diagnosis, addressing or treatment, if we call it that. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then getting the selection of products right. If you have a ideal product for sleep, but it's making you want to eat everything in sight, it's probably not an ideal choice for most people. So there are a couple things about not only getting the right product, but getting the stuff around that product which matter. We'll cover that a little bit. State of the science, for people that have interest in more of the nerdy stuff, this is my camp. There are 41-ish up to 52, depending on how rigorous you call a study on sleep. But they're in the 40s clinical trials that have been done since the mid 60s, 70s. There's still a couple underway now, and we can look through what they're telling us, since it seems like this is so important to a lot of people. And then taking a closer look, I was thinking we could cover a couple cases. Most of this stuff might be hitting partly where people have interest in learning about sleep. But I'll keep that to 2 cases, and then if people have others or have personal questions about their own experience, we can dive into that. And then briefly covering what's on the horizon for next. There's a lot of stuff coming for sleep and cannabis, both within what we're doing at CED and elsewhere. And I'll try to highlight some of that stuff if people have interest. And then as we're growing the Fireside Chats, we've basically blown up the options. There's so much interest, both in guest speakers and other ideas for topics. I think this has been a real hit for people that I guess have nothing to do during coronavirus. Or at least enjoy the topics in this way. And then we'll have an open forum, which is free for all. Anybody has any questions or thoughts or stories, we can dive in there.
Sounds like a plan.
I'm good. All right. So kick it right off. Sleep hygiene is something that is very underappreciated. As a family doc, I would see people come in and we mostly address things like you have your phone in front of you when you're sleeping, you have lights on, you have the TV in the bedroom. Really, the medical industry has honed in on a very particular environment for sleep, which is healthy, and obviously as dark as it can be. And then beyond that, really, there should be a dedicated hour, dedicated time. This is partly because our circadian rhythm depends on regularity. Even plants, but little animals, big animals, all of basically the animal kingdom has a sleep cycle. This is governed by dedicated areas of our brain. And when disturbed, when people don't sleep with regularity or with a regular schedule, or they have distractions which are waking them up from sleep, that can be a major source of disturbance for sleep, both in sleep quality and sleep latency, sort of how long it takes to fall asleep. Your body is a alarm, basically. It's a clock that runs on a regular schedule. And actually, some people aren't aware of this, but not everybody's schedule works on a 12-hour clock. There are people who always say, oh, I only need 4 hours of sleep and I'm fine, or I need 15 hours, or I never get enough. Part of that is because their body might be set to a different schedule. Just because we have a clock that tells us there are 12 hours in a day doesn't mean your body thinks that. And that's a strange angle for a lot of people. But part of the process and I guess luxury of cannabis is that because we're all learning, because this is such a new industry, there's an opportunity to see how your body's responding to different products and match the products to your personal needs. That's going to be different for everybody. So it's actually a really perfect setting to individualize sleep and use cannabis. So sleep hygiene, basically the only things that are allowed, darkness, sex is actually really good for sleep. Some people think that it's going to be energizing or activating in some way, but it doesn't bear out in the literature. And then reading books has been studied and shows that people can read as a way to sort of lull themselves into sleep. And then beyond that, really, avoiding TVs, avoiding even the radio, avoiding certainly, phones and pads and all these technology things that we use. There isn't much science, just because I know there are questions out there about it. There isn't much science about the blue light and which light is okay and using that stuff in bed. We don't really know. I understand the industries are sort of, caught up on it, and you can find every little thing to buy. I don't know if the science is really there yet. What else about sleep hygiene? Hydration also is something that's very neglected and related to sleep. This goes both ways. Most people over 50 that talk about their difficulty sleeping, often report, well, I'm up at night urinating a bunch, and that keeps me up. And that's something to think about. I think if you are up at night peeing, then probably consider stopping fluid intake, at 6 p.m. or whatever, a couple hours before you go to sleep. On the other hand, most people who are dehydrated, and that's 80% of the population, actually, most of us don't drink enough water. Dehydration can also lead to poor quality sleep. So those are things which are sort of necessary to be a healthy human, and cannabis is not going to hack. It's not going to whack you over the head and just make you pass out and have brilliant sleep if you're not treating your body well. All right, I think we've probably killed sleep hygiene enough. State of the industry. So this is exciting and disappointing. The industry is starting to catch up that medical stuff matters more than just recreational. I think that's actually ironically news. Although medical has been the path to entry for most people, it's not been a real focus. The industry is largely driven by profits. Most dispensaries go into great debt, being able to open, and they have to pay back the people who have put money on the table to help them proceed. So rightly so, those the people that have put the risk out deserve their money back. But unfortunately, also thrown in there is, oh well, I kind of like my fancy car, and I kind of like my whatever they're using their money. So money ends up being a huge driver for the cannabis industry, which is very different than, oh, I wish I could help a lot of people with sleep or with pain or with stress. That's not really a central driver for the industry, although it has been a driver for the medical industry. So I think until the medical industry, the sort of Western medical industry, gets their foot in the cannabis door, we're not going to see too much of a drive for treating medical conditions. I'm doing as much yelling as I can in the cannabis industry and in the regular medical industry to get this as a priority. But I think maybe time will tell, and I don't think too much time. I think the horizon for cannabis being a mainstream part of American life, at least, is probably the next 5 years. I think we're really close. But anyway, so the state of the industry is not driven by sleep. So we're starting to see kitschy products, I would call them, out of California and Colorado. There are a couple even here in Massachusetts, where some folks have read, oh, CBN is good for sleep, and they throw mostly THC because they want to make money, and throw a little bit of CBN and call it sleep. There are whole companies that have sleep vapor pens, and really they're just kind of throwing a dart at the board saying, I hope CBN does something for sleep. And there are some groups in the CBD world that have tried to throw like chamomile or honey or sort of other lavender oil, some of the things which the almost naturopathic industry, the sort of nutraceutical industry has found helpful for sleep, or at least helpful to sell their products, because they're not really checking if they work or not. So we see a lot of these in the market. The truth is that some of them work, some of them don't. You know, cannabis, like all medicine, is a personal match. You know, there are people who want a lot of THC, and that makes them feel good enough that they can fall asleep. There are other people who hate a high and just want pure CBD, and getting enough CBD actually will help them sleep. So getting the products right is really what's right for you. And that's not really like everybody's going to love a Snickers bar. It's not like that. Well, there's no one size fits all.
Have there been studies to show that those major cannabinoids like THC and CBD do help with sleep? I know a lot of people have been looking, especially at CBD for sleep. They've got a lot of money in marketing, and because it's more readily available, a lot of people think that CBD is similar to CBN in the fact that they can market it for sleep. But I'm curious, you know, with your research, if you found that because, you know, CBD, it's kind of been, oh, it's good for going to sleep, it's good for keeping you awake. Do you find that that's very similar to, like you said, how it's a very personal experience to determine whether or not it is good for one thing or another?
It's a good question. There definitely is evidence to show that some cannabinoids other than THC and CBD help with sleep. CBN is one. Actually, Delta 8 is another. CBC actually has been helpful. And there are a host of terpenes and flavonoids also. So the research is showing that a lot of cannabis is helpful for sleep. You know, we in regular culture hear, well, what about indica? Indica is good for sleep. And this is what's called a heuristic. It's a summarizing way of explaining to people that some cannabinoids, some terpenes, some flavonoids means sleepy. So instead of teaching everybody science, we call it indica. And the stores can make that simple. Everybody understands indica, couch. But truthfully, there is no such thing as indica anything. It's a representation of what components are in cannabis that make someone feel calm or quiet or drowsy. You know, if you could grow a indica plant in Boston and have it be the perfect sleep aid. It's just a perfect match for me. It works like a charm. You could take that genetics and grow it under different lights or in a different state, under different weather, and get a completely different effect, completely different plant. And that's really sort of amazing for people, I think. And that sort of highlights the complexity of what we're dealing with here. And hopefully boosts the take home that it's individual. That even the same product bought from the same place, grown in the same place, under the same circumstances, might be different later. And that's a little bit of, I guess, more frustration than hope. But our individual differences are also not consistent. I mean, today I might be less hydrated than I was yesterday, or I might have exercised less than I did the day before. And those kinds of things, how much food I had in my stomach, also affect the way cannabis is integrating with my body and how it will help me or not sleep. So why don't we dive into state of the science? I think the punchline. Actually, one more point on the selection of products. So even if we could find products now which had advertised, you know, for sleep and had the right components, if there are other elements about that product that aren't a match, that's not going to help me. For example, if it is really long lasting, that product might help me sleep. But if I wake up groggy in the morning, no thanks, I'm not going to want that. Or on the other hand, if it's too short-lived, if I want to sleep the whole night and this product I have advertised for sleep is just going to help me for a couple hours, that's also not a match. So looking at a selection of products for sleep is not just which ones help me sleep. It's which ones help me sleep, but also have the right duration, have the right onset. So the timing has to be right. And then the euphoric effects, I mean, that has to be right too. As I was alluding before, people prefer to be high or not. And then hopefully the environment is ideal and we have that right sleep hygiene. So you can see it's like a multi-step process, which is probably why a lot of people are frustrated and have difficulty. So let's jump into the state of science. As I said, there are 40, close to 50 clinical trials that have been done that reference sleep. So the idea, of course, out there that there's no evidence is not true, but it is true that a lot of the evidence is really what we call secondary measures. These are not studies which have gone out trying to see, is cannabis helpful for sleep? There are studies which say, is this good for PTSD? Is this good for multiple sclerosis or chronic pain? And while they have these people taking these studies, oh, by the way, is this helping you sleep? Do you feel like your sleep quality is better? Do you feel like you're having a better day? All these other questions that are apart from the main drive of the study. And that doesn't necessarily reduce the quality of what we're learning, but it does mean that the investigators, the authors of these clinical trials, are not looking as carefully. So they might not consider, okay, this is helping this group of people sleep, but those people also happen to be the ones who are going to the beach every day and having a leisurely day and not working. Or they might also be the group that has, terrible chronic illnesses, and God, anything that helps their pain will help them sleep. So they're not looking as carefully at the sleep sort of results. But that being said, as a secondary measure, when people are looking at sleep, when these authors are looking at sleep, we do see improved quality of sleep. We do see fewer disturbances of sleep. We do see reduced difficulty getting to sleep. That's called sleep onset latency. It's when you're sitting in bed thinking about all the terrible things to do tomorrow, or you can't go to sleep. We do see a reduction in that with cannabis. But as I said, these are all sort of circumstances which are not A to B. They're not specifically investigated. They're not specifically clear. Another point is, not only are these not primary measures in studies, but they're also with products which are mostly CBD or THC. The first things, the sort of most easily approved studies are the ones based on the pharmaceuticals. Dr. Russo did a study on a pharmaceutical and could show that it was helpful because it's easy to do this study and limited ingredients. You're not looking at a lot of confounding variables. So CBD has been studied, Sativex has been studied. All the major pharmaceuticals have, to some extent. Smoked cannabis has also, and when we're looking at smoked cannabis, we're looking at consumption with a temperature that is 10 times a useful temperature. We're throwing the marshmallows right into the middle of the bonfire, cooking them to create who knows what. It's not just sugary anymore. It's all kinds of other things. And same thing with cannabis. When you burn it, you're destroying close to 90% of it, creating things that you didn't start out with. So there are a lot of limitations for studies. By and large, the punchline, though, is clear, that cannabis does help sleep. It helps people stay asleep. It helps people get to sleep. And it helps the quality of sleep overall. Is it really meaningful that we don't have a massive, perfect, clinical trial? I don't think so. I think, clinical trials are really aimed at averaging over a group of people and don't necessarily apply individually. As long as we get the punchline that overall it works, the rest is kind of left to the doctor and patient to fine-tune things correctly.
In regards to the burnt cannabis, I heard that the reason why the experience of, say, smoking a joint or a bowl versus vaporizing your flower is actually some sort of carbon monoxide, that effect of inhaling that is what really causes the faster onset. And it's actually that lack of oxygen because you're inhaling smoke, that actually is what more people feel that heavy sedative feeling which is why they may think that vaporizing their flower because it maybe takes longer isn't as effective. Is there anything to that in regards to, you know, when you're smoking, is that a carbon monoxide, lack of oxygen? What is that sort of punch to the face feeling?
It's a great question. I've heard all kinds of related questions, like, you know, if I'm coughing, do I get more high? Or is it because of the heat from smoking? Is that why I get, you know, sort of a better feeling from it, or it's more helpful? You know, the truth is nobody knows. You know, the science, the theory is pointing us to say that probably oxygen deprivation is not involved at all. You know, the idea people sometimes have that, oh, I'm filling my lungs up with stuff which is not oxygen. Not really. I mean, even if you're smoking a joint, you have oxygen filtrating the entire joint, entire lungs. The lung capacity we have is massive. Really, like if we called it a tennis court, your lung capacity is massive. You really only need like maybe the area just at the net to survive. I mean, the rest of your lungs is extra, which is partly why smokers don't die necessarily because of lung disease, at least not early enough. Usually they die of cancer or other related illnesses. You don't need that much of your lung capacity. You could have a lung transplant and survive with just one lung or even one lobe of a lung. So the oxygen deprivation thing really is probably not the case. Carbon monoxide, yeah, you're getting a little bit of carbon monoxide in your blood. It actually is, carbon monoxide creates a oxygen storing mechanism, which is preferential to oxygen, meaning if you have carbon monoxide in your lungs, it's going to be more impairing, I guess, for oxygen delivery. But you're not getting enough that it would really be meaningful. And your body is quite well, you know, able to circulate all of this stuff very, very quickly and have that not be really relevant.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Well, hopefully that was clear. It's hard to translate some of the science. All right, so next would be closer look and a few case studies. It's really common for people to come in and just be completely frustrated with what they're doing. I had a patient recently who came in, and this woman had tried a gummy, and the gummy was 2.5 milligrams of THC and 5 milligrams of CBD. This was, you know, she had in mind that this was going to be something which was not euphoric because it was dominant in CBD, twice as much CBD as THC. And she was thinking 2.5 milligrams of THC is probably a low dose. They hopefully won't feel anything. It turns out that the experience was, you know, pleasantly intoxicating. She wasn't high as a kite. She had a good time. And she felt like her sleep was incredible. She was taking it for sleep, obviously. The sleep was fantastic. Really some of the best quality sleep she had in whatever, a long time. But she felt like groggy, like sort of thick was the term she used, like molasses. And really what was happening there was the duration of this cannabinoid, you know, with whatever else she had in her stomach, was lasting into the daytime. And that was not a feature she liked. This is a woman who's very athletic and normally running, you know, during the daytime, and she was not able to do that because she felt sort of too groggy. So that's a scenario where dose becomes relevant, dose and constituents. You know, a lot of people think that focusing just on the THC is really all you have to do, and that's not true. And a lot of people think that, oh, if I have CBD, I'm going to cancel out the THC. That's also not true. You know, as far as the dosage goes, a total dosage is really going to be relevant. Meaning if it was 2.5 milligrams total, as opposed to 7.5 milligrams, 2.5 THC and 5 CBD, if it were 2.5 total, that's a relevant thing to keep in mind. You know, what she took was really 7.5 milligrams total with a divided ratio of 2 to 1, 2 CBD to 1 THC. You know, in her case, maybe it was, you know, how much she'd been consuming beforehand or how much she had not been consuming before. Maybe she was naive to it. It just wasn't a match. So dosing is relevant, as well as the ratios, the sort of constituents for what's there. Part of what happens with a mixture of CBD and THC, sorry, talking too much, my throat just gets dry.
We could do a chat on that, on dry mouth.
Yes, not talk so much, hopefully in the future ones. But anyway, so dosage is relevant. The ratio at low doses of CBD, and 5 milligrams is pretty low compared to what CBD is ideal. At low doses, it actually amplifies the THC. There's a apologize. There's a biphasic reaction. It happens at low doses. CBD amplifies THC. At actually higher doses, it doesn't mask it, but it changes the receptor binding. So CB1 receptors bind THC, and CB1 receptors bind CBD with preference. So as the volume gets high enough, the CBD basically kicks THC off the receptors, and you'll get less of the, you know, usual side effects or main effects of THC. But at low doses, they work very similarly, and you can get more euphoric than you want. So that was one case. You know, another case, which is probably more common, is that it just doesn't work. That whatever people try to get to sleep, whether it's low dose, high dose, doesn't matter, it's just not working. You know, it's hard to know if this is really a clean test. You know, when someone comes in saying that their cannabis isn't working, the first thing I'm thinking about is sleep hygiene. You know, are these people sleeping in a dark room? Do they not have their phone by their bed? Are all the things we talked about? Probably not. And, you know, as I was saying, cannabis is not like Ambien or a sledgehammer where it's just going to put you out. That's not the way it works. It's more of an adjunct to your body chemistry, if that's what it is, or other medicines that might be helping people to sleep. I have a ton of patients who are doing Ambien, but also melatonin and some over-the-counter options. And it's really a perfect mix of what the environment is, both at home in your body as well as what other medicines are on board. You know, if someone who has trouble sleeping and is coming to cannabis to help is probably already on some other sleep medicine, whether it's Ambien or melatonin or trazodone or whatever. And sometimes they take the approach of dropping everything and kind of putting all their eggs in the cannabis basket. And that's not a good approach. Your body is going to be used to these other medicines, and there has to be some kind of handoff involved where you're slowly reducing other medicines and slowly increasing cannabis so that your body has a new ecosystem, I guess, that's more conducive to better sleep. But it's, again, not just about the cannabis, it's also about the other sleep hygiene stuff. And then, you know, on top of the chemistry, if we call the sort of ecosystem and the cannabis chemistry, apart from the chemistry, there's also other things going on. You know, all of us are stressed with coronavirus these days, and anxiety is a criminal in the bedroom. It's really difficult for anybody to feel comfortable and restful, like they're ready to sleep if they're stressed out, or if they're worried about their kids going to school, or just catching coronavirus and, you know, not being available for school. So anxiety is a major thing, but other sort of comorbidities, we call them, other things that are bothering people or illnesses that are going on are also relevant. And, you know, someone who has terrible knee pain and just wants to sleep, boy, do I really want to sleep. Okay, but if you're in pain, we can't have you sleeping like a songbird while you're in pain. So I think other things need to be addressed too. That's probably enough for case studies for now. Other people, I'm sure, will have good questions. On the horizon, so there are a bunch of things happening down the road. Internally at CED, I'm working with a new company on a companion app, a cannabis companion app, which will help guide people with specific products that are available here in Massachusetts or, you know, wherever people are, and be able to learn from what you teach us about, oh, I'm this tall, I'm this old, I'm taking these medicines, I have these conditions. we can take that information, process it, and output a cannabis option which suits your interests. Of course, this is a living lab, a living app, which will take not only my feedback and my input about the products that are available and about the conditions that people have, but also the feedback from patients directly. And if someone says, boy, I'm 40 years old, I'm 6'10", I love this, I guess that would be strange, but if they really love this cannabis for sleep, we're going to learn that from them and then be able to spread that quickly among the other people who are 40 years old, 6'10", and want something to sleep. So it's a kind of living entity. For people that have interest, we're actually starting to take feedback from patients already. And then if you want to be involved, anybody who wants to be involved will get lifetime access to the app later when it rolls out. On the horizon, I think more products also being sold at dispensaries which are focused on sleep is going to be common. My advice here is really keep your skepticism high. Marketing is very successful, and reality and science is very much on the path, but nowhere near effective yet for everybody under all circumstances. All right, so preview for next stuff. We're gonna start unloading some guest speakers, and if people have interest in particular avenues or particular speakers, we have great access and great reach across the industry. Specifically, we're thinking about some dispensary growers, master growers coming on and teaching people how to do stuff at home, how to grow plants at home if they want. Of course, we're going to cover lots more medical topics. We've covered coronavirus last time. We'll cover pain and anxiety and creativity, how to increase your creativity with cannabis. We'll cover something to the effect of getting the right high. Everybody's a little bit different, and how to know what you might want and how that translates to cannabis is something I think people will be interested in hearing about. And then making your own stuff. For those who haven't seen our website, we have now a new page of recipes, and you can have, make your own spa products, you can make your own foods, you can make your own whatever. And that'll be a topic for a future fireside chat. All right, enough of me. I gotta drink something, and we should open it up to questions if people have.
Let's see. So I had two come in earlier. One of our guests here suffers from dry eyes, and THC actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
And so do you have any ideas as to how they can maybe still consume their cannabis, but without the negative impact with the dry eyes?
Yeah. So cannabinoid, some of the cannabinoids, but not all of them, are also activate mucosal membranes and also deactivate mucosal membranes. So you have to think about cannabis's action both as a starter and an inhibitor, because depending on what you're talking about, whether it's CBD or THC or other components, sometimes these are causing dry eyes, and actually sometimes they are doing the opposite. There are certain elements of cannabis which can stimulate mucous membranes, and that's why sometimes you see people crying or having discharge, and as opposed to having dry eyes or cotton mouth. So getting the mix right, getting the cannabis right is tough. The options are not out there yet. We're still in a sort of infant stage of the industry. The folks growing it, the folks managing it don't know what they're doing with respect to medical effects, clinical effects of these cannabinoids. So really for right now, the solutions for that depend on normal medicine. So things like medicines which activate your mucosal membranes, help you tear naturally. Or if those aren't available, then eye drops that sort of give you artificial tears. Anti-inflammatories actually work really well too. Sometimes, I'm so sorry, like dry mucous membranes. Some of cannabis, sorry, some of dry eyes is because of inflammation. The the vessels of your conjunctiva, the area around your eye, are inflamed, irritated. And sometimes taking ibuprofen or Tylenol, if those can help. But anyway, you see the solutions really are non-cannabis medicine, unfortunately. Other question?
Let's see. Oh, here they come.
I'm not seeing all these questions. Are you seeing them?
Yeah, I can see them from the panelist side here. Started using indica edibles to avoid waking up in the middle of the night. Have had good results, but recently I have reawakened in the middle of the night. Is it possible that my dosage needs to increase over time, or is my body getting used to it and I just need to adjust the current dose?
It's a great question. With all of cannabis consumption, there's both a tolerance and actually a anti-tolerance. You know, your body has fat cells which absorb cannabis. You know, part of what you take in an edible, for example, goes right to your brain and right to your organs, and it works. You feel the effects. But part of it also goes into your fat cells and is stored over time. So when you're taking the cannabis, the stuff that's hitting your brain can develop a tolerance. If you're having just triangles hit your brain, your body sort of sees it and says, okay, I get the point. There's a lot of triangles here, great. And it starts to ignore them. The areas which would click with the triangles actually go away. Those receptors vanish. This is basically an effective tolerance. One option you have is to mix triangles with squares or circles. And as you have other components coming into your brain sees the triangles as more special, more relevant. I should pay attention to that. So what that translates into cannabis is maybe varying the constituents. You know, if you're taking an edible which is just CBD or just THC, mix it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be the same edible. You could try maybe a drop of tincture of something else. CBG these days is sold online. Some of the dispensaries are starting to sell it. For those who don't know about it, you don't really have to know anything. It's just different that it's a square or a triangle or a circle as opposed to a triangle. That can make a big difference. As far as cannabis over time, I mean, it's typical for people to increase their dosage. This is normal. You know, we get used to everything, whether it's the temperature of a shower. You know, when you're in the shower, it's not hot enough. You have to keep cranking it hotter and hotter and hotter. This is a normal part of being a human, is your body is trained to feel things and then stop feeling them as acutely. So it's normal for people to increase dosage over time. If it gets expensive, I suppose you could either grow it and make it yourself, or you could take breaks. And there are certainly tolerance breaks that people take and have success with. Although maybe that should be a whole talk on itself because it's quite a complex thing. Mm-hmm. Next question.
Next one here. Is there any evidence that THC inhibits REM sleep?
It's a very detailed, specific question. Yes, there is evidence that it does.
I've heard this as well, so I'm curious what your take is.
So, you know, the studies are all over the map. Based on how poorly they're conducted, there aren't really very many EEG studies which look at brainwave sort of electricity as people are sleeping. A lot of these studies are done with self-report, which is notoriously inaccurate. You know, basically, for the people that aren't familiar with sort of different stages of sleep, there are some stages which are distinct. We know that our brains are thinking, sort of processing, relaxing differently in different stages of sleep. And the question is really getting at, does it affect the deepest sleep, the one which is most restful, and happens to have rapid eye movement? If you could wake people, you would see their eyes moving rapidly. It's also a situation of paralysis. Our muscles actually don't work while we're in REM sleep. Or it's not they work, they're just stiff. And how does cannabis relate to that? You know, the truth is we don't know. And I don't want to sort of be too committed because the jury's still out. But I've seen a couple thousand people who have had difficulty sleeping. And the sort of take-home message that I'm learning is it's fantastic for people who have sleep disturbances. So people who have restless leg syndrome, for example, or who have night terrors. cannabis has been a lifesaver. I mean, almost across the board. I can't actually think of an example where it hasn't been helpful. So for sleep disturbances, it's helpful. And a lot of those disturbances happen actually either just before REM or just after. So the literature tells us, the regular medical literature tells us. So it's definitely helpful. The question really gets at, is it bad? Is there something to be concerned about? And I think if there were, we wouldn't be hearing the incredible din of approval and praise and joy related to people in cannabis. So my hunch is that it's not concerning in any way. And you know, to sort of juice it up, some of the literature that we're seeing about cognitive decline, so things like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, a lot of those diseases relate to the body's filtration, which happens while we're sleeping. And one theory that's out there is that cannabis, which is helping people sleep better, is allowing these diseases which sometimes have proteins which need to be filtered out and cleansed out of the brain. That one of the theories is that these people are sleeping more deeply, more thoroughly, and they're actually able to clear some of these faulty proteins out of their brains more readily. And same thing is true of the prevention of these illnesses. So my money is on good, if not all good, mostly good. Hopefully that gets at specific enough and palatable enough for the rest of the audience.
We have one come through the chat here. Can lower doses of CBD have an opposite effect and keep you awake? And the reference point they gave was 4 to 8 milligrams.
Yes, yeah. So this, most of the CBD, so it depends on where it's sold. Most of the CBD sold out of dispensaries still tucks in a little bit of THC in there. Part of that is because THC is their business. And they want the products to be more appealing. So if they can give you something, hey, which makes you feel good, they're going to do that. CBD bought online is the opposite. It has to actually have almost no THC in there because that's the federal law. Low doses can have the opposite effect. Yes. I mean, the clear answer is yes. How to mitigate that is actually simple. Just have larger doses. Or have it with other components which might be helping help with sleep. So things like limonene, lemon juice, citrus sorts of things can help calm people down. Lavender, mint, actually, menthol is one of the cannabinoids which happens to be soothing and relaxing. Pinene is something that's really common in cannabis. It's one of the terpenes that happens to be bronchodilatory. It opens up the airway passages, so people that have asthma have found it helpful, but it's also very relaxing and comforting when you can breathe deeply. You know, it's conducive to sleep. You know, the method to the madness is really careful, slow trials. You know, everybody will recommend go slow and with low dosages and increase over time. One of the incredible opportunities we have with cannabis is you can't hurt yourself. There's no toxic dose that has any lasting damage. So if you're trying with low doses and it's not working, I would try maybe doubling it or maybe go up 50% and see how that goes. And try that for a couple days. And if that's not doing it, up by 50% and try that for a couple days. And eventually you'll hit a location, a size, a dosage, which is working.
And then now, is that the same with, you mentioned earlier how indica, while typically associated with sleepy, indica couch, and sativas are typically more of that daytime sort of high, this kind of tails into one of the last questions that came in. Are there some forms of cannabis that are better for sleep than others, like an edible versus a tincture or smoking? You mentioned the different onset, the falling asleep versus staying asleep. And so I guess my question blended with this patient's question is, if you see something marketed as sativa, do you recommend that for, you know, if someone wants to use, you know, cannabis, they got their sleep cycle down, but maybe they overslept and they don't want to have another cup of coffee? How do you find that patients are using cannabis for their daytime sleep hygiene?
Right. So there's lots to unpack there.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is all very complicated stuff. I imagine most people will get that, you know, as a take-home message here, that it's not so simple. I think if you're going to make it manageable, you got to go with the resources that you have. Dispensaries are putting these indica sativa products out there. I think that's a fair place to start. I think what's equally useful is to approach testimonials and see what other people have found helpful, because we are often better as a community than we are sort of one-on-one with cannabis anyway. We at CED have tried to put together resources of testimonials for patients. We collect information about everybody. We're learning all the time, and we give that information right back. So when people have an appointment with us, they fill out an intake form which teaches us about their experience with cannabis, about where they're coming from, whether it's nothing or a lot of experience, and we then unpack that information and put it right into the public's hands. So you can read those testimonials. Lily, maybe you have the link to that. If people have interest, they can read it. We also are digesting the lessons learned from these testimonials, and we put that together into a sleep guide. The sleep guide is broken down by 4 different methods. So from using lotions to help sleep, which seems kind of wacky, but we keep tension in our bodies, and if you can relax tension just like a massage with lotions, you'll get some effect on sleep. And then other methods like inhaling or using tinctures or using edibles all have subtly different effects. And this sleep guide that Lily just posted in the chat might be a useful resource for people. These are just ways to simplify and try to average for most people. A lot of cannabis is a one-on-one sort of engagement and a one-on-one opportunity, and that's really what I'm here for. And that's my job. So if people are struggling, I hope I hope to be there. I mean, I don't charge people to help as time goes on. There's obviously a charge at the beginning, but as time goes on, I want you to have success, and we don't charge for that. Hopefully I got some of the question there. Or we've successfully put everybody to sleep. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I had heard something like a tincture or inhalation with a faster onset is better for getting to sleep, and something like an edible is better for staying asleep because it takes a little longer to break down. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. For 2 reasons. I think the one is how long these are circulating in your system. Cannabis taken by mouth is processed in a very different way than cannabis that's coming directly into your bloodstream through the lungs or underneath the tongue, the vessels that are there. So yeah, with tinctures underneath your tongue as opposed to swallowed, or with things you're breathing in, you tend to have a very quick effect. And if that quick effect is something which is making you sleep, you're going to go to sleep more quickly. On the other hand, if you're looking for something which is knocking you out for the night, maybe you have no trouble falling asleep, but you're waking up during the night, then an edible is going to last longer because of the way it's processed. I think that makes a lot of sense to approach cannabis that way, to think about the conditions around the experience of helping sleep. Make sure that all the conditions are ideal. You have the right intoxication level you want, you have the right duration you want, you have the right onset you want, you have the right energy effects. And then once you have those, then you can attack the problems that are more front and center. That's also a nice way of dividing these dispensaries. One of the things that we're also doing is tabulating all of the unique products that these dispensaries have, the unique cannabinoids, the unique terpenes where they're available. For people that have interests, we are putting these out there so you can sort of hunt down all the new products that are focused on anything except CBD and THC. There aren't many of them, unfortunately, but I think as people develop a taste for these, or at least know about them, we as consumers can start driving the industry instead of being puppets to what the industry wants. I think that's a real special opportunity. It's not every day that we have so much control over the industry, but I think if people are finding such and such product really helping them sleep, and that product is put out there as an experiment, we will see the industry basically cater to what patients want.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I see lots of questions here. Okay, good. Oh, we got some of these. These are the ones you were reading from. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Well,
yes. I was afraid to dismiss them in case they would
good.
go away.
So we got 4 minutes left. Anybody want to share any comments or questions, either in chat or verbally?
Dr. Caplan, it's Kimberly. I have a question. If you purchase a product that is meant to be taken sublingually, but then, you know, you'll see people may like put it in a cup of tea or on their food, does that change the effectiveness of the result that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily in a bad way, but it's a completely different product. Your body has blood vessels underneath your tongue that are constantly flowing with blood and brings cannabis into the system very quickly. Your body also has plenty of access through your whole digestive tract, including your stomach, including the areas beyond your stomach, all of which can absorb cannabis. If there happens to be some oily stuff from a buttery toast or from a rich pasta meal, the cannabis can infuse into that oily mixture and last a whole lot longer. So effects which might be perceived as enjoyable in a short run, you know, maybe they make you super high. Let's just use that as an example. When they're drawn out over your whole digestive tract or over time, might not have any euphoric effects at all. And so what we expect from one delivery method, when you change it, can change the effects radically. It's really important for people to at least have some consistency in what you're consuming so that you understand better how that product is affecting you. It's a great.
Okay, then someone just chimed in, does drinking wine and taking cannabis do anything?
Yes, so wine and cannabis are both processed, digested as it were, in your liver. And as the liver is occupied with digesting wine, processing it, detoxifying it, sort of filtering it out, the cannabis can float freely because your liver is busy and you end up with a little bit more of a strong high. Conversely, if your liver is busy consuming cannabis and processing cannabis, the alcohol lasts a little bit longer and you end up more intoxicated, drunk, whatever that is. So they do both get processed in the same train station. And sometimes that can have an amplifying effect for both of them. This is actually largely the cornerstone of cannabis interacting with other medicines. When a medicine is processed in your liver, which is many medicines, that's what our liver is for processing. When something is being digested by the liver, the other thing can last longer or vice versa. Leave it there. All right, so we got 1 minute left. Any last question, or should we call it a night?
Looks like we checked all the boxes.
Okay.
Any other ones come through?
Yeah, we can always answer questions over email if people have follow-up questions. We got a couple follow-ups around coronavirus from the last talk, and one of the questions we also got was about recording these and making them public. We haven't really thought through that yet. I think there's something special about having just the people that are here live with us get sort of access. I think there's also something nice about serving the people who can't show up. So TBD.
I have been just taking some quick notes, and so I'll put together a call summary and just share it with those that joined us this evening. Awesome. And so then you feel like you'll have your little goodie bag of information. I'll be sending that out this week. And so that maybe if that sparks up any other questions that you have an easy way to reach out to us at the CED Clinic. And hopefully that, you can use that to excite your friends to join us next time.
Mm-hmm. Charlotte asked about signing up with the sleep study app. If you just email us at info@cedclinic.com, I'll connect you. It's pretty easy. The company who's helping me create this app is super high tech. It's going to be a big deal. There's nothing like this in the app sort of space yet. I think it's really going to be revolutionary. And it'll be nice to have for free, but it's also nice to contribute and to learn about you and to help other people. It's really an awesome convergence of altruism. All right, thank you everybody. I hope this was helpful. you know, we're going to continue on. So stay in touch if you'd like. You can always register for these. They will be free forever. For those who are interested in sort of more personal one-on-one kind of talks, obviously we have that too. You can reach out to the same email address, info@cedclinic.com. And we'll call it a night. All right. Hope you're all well. Stay safe. And thanks for coming.
All right, everyone, have a good night's sleep. Take care.